This kind of thing, the yin and yang, there's this idea of chaos and order. So yang is order and yin is chaos. And in a story, it's good to, like, the best place to be in a story that makes a story interesting and at the same time structured is to be right in the middle line there, just skirting in that sweet spot. That's a good thing, because you need both things in a story. You need the yang part, which is the structure, the character, and all these things have to be consistent. When you know the structure and the character, then you've limited the story. So that was the good thing, like for example with the drunk guy who is trying to meet Buddha and Jesus by drinking. He's limited by his drinking, but at the same time he's reaching into the unknown, and the unknown is the yin, that's chaos. So there's a balance between those two things. He is a certain character, he has a certain life, those are the yang aspects, but the yin aspects are what he's trying to reach, the things outside himself, and also the unknown effects that alcohol might have on him. So we need both the light and the dark elements, and this is really part of the human psyche as well. Like there's even the etiological myths in culture. I mean, the cosmogonic myths of, I believe, like all cultures have, originally this myth of where a chaos being is killed and cut into pieces, and the world is created out of this chaos being. So in Babylonian mythology, the chaos being is the dragon Tiamat, and she is angry. She wants to kill all the gods and destroy the world. And what the gods do is that they select one god to be in charge. His name is Marduk, and he represents order. Marduk has the power because he has eyes all around his head, and the power of this is because eyes represent consciousness. So he's able to look at the unknown, at the chaos, and because chaos is something that also we don't really want to face in our lives, like all the stuff we don't have control over, we kind of tend to turn a blind eye to. But in a story, if the story is going to be interesting, we got to have some chaos in there. I mean, a totally ordered story where nothing happens, it's not a story. So, for example, even a soap opera, you know what I mean? A soap opera is totally ordered because there's this family, everything takes place in the living room, right? It's very, very structured, it's very, very ordered, but every episode of that soap opera, something unexpected happens. It looks like their lives are going to change forever, but then they somehow manage to bring things back to normal, and then it starts all over again in the next episode.
And the drama, isn't it? Basically, the concept of drama, to inject those.
Yes, you have to have that element of uncertainty. So those things are like the yin and the yang, the order and the chaos. You have to have the unexpected things and the expected things, and that's why I really recommend some very, very solid characters and a very solid plot to get your order solid. But because for most people it's not really a problem getting chaos in there. For most people who want to write, the problem is too much chaos and too little order, right? So it definitely was my problem. So yeah, but you have to watch that balance and always make sure you're in the middle.
I just want to add, away from the fact of storytelling, that this reminds me, just what you were saying about Jordan Peterson.
Exactly, yeah.
He talks about how you have to go into the chaos to find yourself somehow.
Yes,
You know?
that's right. I have another slide here, which is actually one of Jordan Peterson's slides. So this is,
He's
yeah.
a teacher, right? He's all in politics or something like that.
Well, clinical psychology professor, University of Toronto, and a guy who has studied the inner workings of the psyche, and also especially has studied why mass murders happen, such as the atrocities of the 20th century and the Soviet gulags and the Nazi concentration camps and the Maoist Cultural Revolution. He was very interested in finding out how it was that normal human beings could become mass murderers on such a scale that hundreds of millions of people were actually murdered in the 20th century due to ideologies. So for him it's very important to go deep into the human psyche and to do this work individually, to make sure that you will be one of the people who, if this kind of society comes again, that you will actually not be one of the perpetrators, although like 90% of the people in these societies turned out to go along with what was happening in in Nazi Germany or in
Wir
communist.
haben nicht gewusst, huh? That's what they say. We didn't
Afterwards.
know, we didn't know, but, you know.
Yeah, afterwards, and then when it did happen, it was like a kind of a, because the normal thing at that time was to be a Nazi, right? So, but if you're able to do this deep work on yourself, also the shadow work, and realize your own shadow and see the dark sides of yourself and admit that you have dark sides, then you can not, you can avoid being exteriorizing your dark side, putting it on other people and then killing them, basically. Because if you realize, okay, I'm not that nice of a guy, actually, and maybe it's not the other people that are, completely bad, and I'm completely, good and inoffensive. Maybe I can see both sides, and when I know that I can also be a beast, then that's the beginning of wisdom. You start seeing the beast in yourself. You start seeing the chaos in yourself, and you start being able to balance it.
You know how Hunter S. Thompson starts his book Fear No Las Vegas is he that makes himself a beast gets rid of the pain of being a man.
Ah, nice.
You know?
That's awesome.
That's how the book starts.
Yeah.
And but to get back to Jordan Peterson, what I also really I find the guy fascinating. I don't agree, but because he only eats meat, which is strange.
You don't agree with his diet, but his philosophy, yeah.
Yeah, that's he blew my mind, because I've been looking for a long time for common sense kind of things,
Yeah.
you know, and just bringing it to he's become huge, all over the world. The people come on the BBC and they just talk to him, and he debates with people in such a common sense way that it's inspiring to finally have some common sense ideas. And what his ideas about Jung is fascinating.
Absolutely. So there's Jung and Nietzsche. If I may just say, like this Jordan Peterson slide about order and chaos. So this ties into what he talks about, the dangers in society of too much order, too much chaos. So too much order is authoritarianism and fascism, and too much chaos is decadence and nihilism. And so we can see that in a story, like you have decadence and nihilism in a story. If you have nihilism in a story, the boundaries blur, and you don't have a structure anymore. You have a kind of very intellect. In the best case scenario, you have a very intellectual thing where the author is playing around, and you as a reader have to work a lot to find out what's happening. Sorry?
So unless you're Marcel Proust, better than try it.
Yeah, I mean, Marcel Proust or Salman Rushdie or right, or well, I mean, there are different tries to this kind of postmodern writing. So there's Gabriel García Márquez. If you know The Autumn of the Patriarch. So The Autumn of the Patriarch, he has like chapters that don't have any punctuation. Because there's no order in it. It's just, well, I mean, obviously there's order, but there's much less order, less than, in my opinion, less than you need, because you need some order. And you have to, as a reader, you have to work hard to impose this order on it. And yeah, anyway, you can believe what you will about it, but it's not what we're going for in this course anyway. We're trying to create something that will work from the beginning. And, you know, if you're not a Nobel Prize winning master, then don't try it, I would say. Sorry? Not yet. Yeah, not yet.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. I just have one question to end it really. Is what for you were your biggest pitfalls when you're dealing with this?
So my biggest pitfall, I mean, you know, the first novel I wrote was, I didn't really know what I was doing, so I was just happy I finished it. The second novel, I really had a lot of ambition with the world, so my biggest pitfalls were chaos, because I'm writing about a guy who is on the verge of, like, you know, a psychiatric collapse. And so, of course, his mind is just in chaos. So it's very easy for the story to become in chaos. So to have a story that is structured enough with all that chaos happening and all this psychic material and all these like psychic entities just coming in, like with all this show don't tell, it's easy to derail the story, because they all have a personality, they all have their own character, and they all have a certain wish. And when you write and you get so intensely into the story, you have these characters all wanting different things, and it can be kind of hard to impose chaos, impose order on them. So that was my biggest pitfall. There was too much chaos. So, and it only worked when I imposed order, and that's why in this course, this is what we're doing. We're focusing on order. Chaos is quite easy to come by when you write a story.
How was it for you then to get to the order? So you had that chaos. How for you did you use a mechanism to get back to that order?
I used in the end, I had to swallow my pride. Because I had written 4 full versions of the novel that hadn't worked, not just editing 4 times, but rewriting 4 times. So at that point I was so exhausted, and I had almost spent all my money, so I was like, had the back against the wall, and I was like, I'm going to sit down now and I'm going to find a method that really works for creating a bulletproof structure. And I found the snowflake method, and it really worked. So that was what I did, and I sat down for a month of full-time work, only doing structure, no writing, just structure. And I hated it, but it paid off afterwards.
It gave you a base on how from where to bring everything together.
Yeah, like something to hang it all on. Yeah. That's why I argue for it so much. And in human society, like I think that Jordan Peterson would argue that, and argues that now in our society we're dealing with, so this is a way of seeing how this order and chaos manifests in our lives. Like we're dealing with a lot of chaos because we live in a society, maybe Romania less, but Western society is very more and more nihilistic, and the boundaries for what you can do and what you can't do are kind of just falling apart, and there's a conscious effort to break boundaries everywhere, and that there might be some some legitimate ideas behind that, but the consequences of breaking all these boundaries is that you start getting a society where there are no rules, and you don't know the rules anymore. Nobody knows the rules, and you have to make them up as you go along, and that is very stressful. And in a story, that is also stressful for both for the writer and the reader. So, like having some kind of boundaries in your personal life and as a state and as a society really reduces the stress a lot. And also having a lack of boundaries means also opening up for maybe another culture coming in that has a stronger understanding of itself and stronger boundaries to come in and take over. So, but on the other hand, if you have too strong boundaries, you descend into fascism, you descend into like complete state rule of everything, and where people are scared to speak out. So been there, right?
Yeah, maybe that's why we go quite far, on that side.
Yeah, and in Europe as well, because Europe, I know that you mean Romania, right?
Recently.
More recently. And Europe has the memory of, Western Europe has, and Eastern Europe, the memory of Nazism, so that means that there are some very strong mechanisms against that, like in the European Union. European Union is founded on the idea of avoiding another Second World War, and also in Germany especially, like going exactly in the opposite direction. So, yeah.
We had the League of Nations
right
until the Second World War, and Japan and Germany just said, "Up you guys," and they went away. And I think also when you look at the Weimar Republic, it's exactly like you're saying. There was so much chaos, but there was also a lot of potential. Because the art that was made then, like by the German expressionists, is like very easy, mad stuff. And I think it was a reaction from the rural areas to go like, "Hey guys, we're not taking this. We want our structure," and they went the other way.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and the inflation that happened, which is like total chaos. Like if you needed a wheelbarrow of money to buy a loaf of bread, that's just chaos. So, and it's interesting to talk about these things because, like one thing that you mentioned, George Peterson, one thing he says is that the fundamental reality of the human psyche and even human neurology is not so much like atoms and molecules, but order and chaos, right? So we see things in order and chaos, and we have different, like our way of viewing the world is based on order and chaos. So that we, and that's what we need also for when we write stories, to be conscious of that, because we already have building blocks of reality inside our neurology, and we activate them when we use show don't tell. And also we have archetypal stories like the hero's myth. The hero comes from order, descends into chaos, brings back something that is valuable back to order, and order again is not this kind of fascist static structure anymore, but is has life again. And that is what you need. That is the lesson, that you need both order and chaos. So that's why a dragon Tiamat, who was killed and cut up, and the world was created of her, but it was created from her. So no chaos, no world, right? You have order. You need the order to create the world, but the chaos is even more fundamental. It's the raw material. So. And you keep having to go back to that, because the dragon, what does the dragon have usually in archetypal imagery? I mean, is the dragon just breathing fire and that's it? Does it have anything good? Sorry?
Of course it has good things.
It has...
Wings.
Sorry?
It has wings.
Sorry?
Wisdom.
Usually guards.
Wise creatures.
It usually guards a treasure, right?
Oh.
So you go and you find that treasure by confronting the dragon. So you have to go to chaos in order to get the treasure. So that's the only way to get the treasures. You need to go to where you do not control things. And it's a fundamental human truth.
There's this thing that Jordan Peterson says, and he kind of really put it well, chaos and order. It's like he takes the allegory for the gymnast there, where like there's like this gymnast and she does this amazing performance and the judges give 9.8, and the person after her is like, how am I going to top perfection? How am I going to do that?
Yeah.
So she goes like into the outer limit of possibility and beyond perfection. You know?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
She goes deep into chaos. Yeah. And risks her limbs, in the process. So, this is it. Stay on the border between order and chaos.